Hello, I'm Dave Feinlieb, and this is Beyond the Shelf. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. You can join our mailing list and learn more about how we can help you create images, videos, display ads, and product descriptions at itsrapid.ai. My guest on today's show is Mark Stamps, Vice President of Digital Commerce at Harvest Group. Mark joined Harvest Group after a career with Walmart, P&G, and Philips. He has a unique set of insights that come from working both hands-on with the latest e-commerce technologies and approaches and leading large e-commerce teams. We cover Mark's perspective on search, visual commerce, and the economics of e-commerce today. Please enjoy my conversation with Mark Stamps. Mark, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Dave. You must have really been at the bottom of your friend list.
My gosh,
to call
no.
me.
You were like, I gotta call Mark to do this. So I appreciate your carving out some time.
Good to see you.
Well, let's take a step back first. You've been at
Walmart.
You've been at Procter and Gamble.
Yeah.
You're at Harvest now, and you've seen this e-commerce area evolve. Take us back. How'd you get into this area? Where'd you get your start? And what's the latest?
Well, I wanted to do something to make some money. So at that time, I got into computers. That was way back when. So I jumped in and worked at Walmart in their IT department. So I got exposed to tech, but that was way before the dot-com boom. So, but as I left Walmart, went to Procter Gamble to understand a little bit more of the branding side, e-commerce still was not a big deal until I would say maybe 2005 to 2008. P&G started to selling things online, and so e-commerce was a little bit of a special project for most CPG brands, and so it was a very small team. We would design a special box and call it the Amazon SKU, but there not a lot of efforts there. But when I had the opportunity to call back on Walmart at P&G, an opportunity popped up to say, do you want to run the Walmart.com business across all the brands? And again, it was one of those, like, nobody was signing up to jump to that job, but I thought, oh, that'd be kind of entrepreneurial inside of a big company. And so being able to do that got me exposed to what I would say early innings to selling consumable products online. So that was kind of the start. Really, I just wanted out of the grind of some of the big box retail. It's like, oh, you do something new. And little did I know that was going to kind of slingshot me into this e-com space that is now taken off. So got to see some early innings, which gave me a lot of confidence to be able to assert opinions and to see how things really work and don't work inside the e-com world. So that's how I got exposure to it. And so now I've been able to share experiences with colleagues and the industry on what works, what doesn't work, and some of the watch outs in this space.
So two things I wanted to parse there. One is this idea of being an entrepreneur at a big company. I'm sure there's lots of our listeners that are curious about that and are entrepreneurs and want to know, how do you do that? It is a big place. These are big companies, but you made it work. And so tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. What's the term? Entrepreneur inside of a company. I would say every company has these little pockets of what I would say autonomy being given to certain people if they're willing to go really kind of take a bet on themselves. But it's small, so it feels like a little bit of a step back, if you will, in terms of, like, everything is based on volume. You got to have the biggest desk or have the biggest responsibility, the biggest team. But quite honestly, it's some of the smaller ones that allow you to, that doesn't have all the resources per se, and gives you the opportunity. So to do more things and to learn faster. Those times in your career where you kind of accelerate your learning curve and just kind of explode. It's because there's no one else to ask, so you got to go figure it out. So it just gives you the venue to do that. So I would look for opportunities inside these companies of what is seemingly broken or not getting a lot of help, and just saying, I'm going to go do that. So it's saying yes.
Wow. Saying yes. I love it. Yeah, the power of yes. Now it sounds easy, but it's not always as easy as it looks.
Well, yeah, I had hair like you, Dave, and now it wasn't as easy as it looks. So
I love it. I love it. But you've made it happen. Now, the other part of what you were talking about there was this transition in e-commerce. And I remember at Content Analytics, we would talk with large brands,
yeah,
and they've had that e-commerce thing that's interesting, and now it's the thing.
yeah.
Of course, we've had huge growth in the industry, but what's going on inside these organizations, and how are they working differently, with digital being such a large part of the business?
And growing part of the business. Again, nothing really matters until it all of a sudden does. And I would say, as a percentage of sales and margins, these bigger brands really didn't appreciate. And I say bigger brands because a lot of consumable brands that might have lower price points and have problems shipping singles out, they were built for big pallet ships and not single box shipments to people's homes. And so it really disrupted their workflow. And so they weren't really excited about it. But as the growth continued to accelerate, they had to pay attention. Like, oh, that's how consumers want to shop. And I would say there's also there was a little bit of a mind shift in the e-commerce world where it was a little bit of a momentum shift when people and brands started to recognize it's less about the thing we're selling and more about the people we're selling to.
Hmm.
And that really got what I would say a lot of the emerging DTC brands. Like, I'll do this, and it's less about the thing I'm selling, but
Yeah.
more about the interaction I can have now with my consumers. And marketers and big brands like desired, I want to know my consumers, but they never created that one-to-one relationship that some of the DTC brands. So I think as brands are waking up more to that, and recognizing the power of the network effect, if you will, of all of the people that they interact with, less focused on just the product and how to do it bigger, faster, cheaper. That it kind of made a momentum shift. Yes, they still have great products, but that relationship with the consumer is what creates that customer lifetime value. That's all because of the customer relationship you developed, trust in your product, but also trust in your brand. So that shift, I would say that brands started to take notice and say, I need to make investments there. Nobody's making money with e-commerce today. But they recognize that it is a necessary for them to participate because that's how the consumers want to interact with them.
When you say no one's making money with e-commerce, does that mean there's a margin issue, or it's shipping, it's all those components? Talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean the math it becomes pretty scripted in an Excel spreadsheet of how much does it cost me to make, how much raw materials, how much the activity based costing to get it to a place in which to then ship, and then the picking and packing and shipping, and then all of the increases in UPS and USPS postage fees. It just creates a model that even scale can't deliver the margin requirements that a lot of brands have become used to, in which to fuel R&D, fuel brand building and awareness capabilities. So unless you're selling very high priced items, but again, if you sell high priced items, you might sell one. Yes, I sold a handbag that cost $800, and like, great, I made some money on that, but I don't think she's coming back to buy another one soon. You can easily do your math to say at some point I will run out. So
Right, right, right.
that's where the math is pretty easy, and so you need to then start to surround the e-commerce environment with not just selling products and interacting with consumers, but how do I then create a profitable environment, not just a profitable selling environment.
And who's doing that well today?
Well, I mean, come on. I would say Amazon has done a great job at creating an environment that attracts brands
Yeah.
because they're not just attracting brands to come sell because they have great products. They're attracting consumers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then they've found a way to monetize those eyeballs for brands. And so I would say they're doing it well, and that they didn't start their business to say, I want to make a lot of money on all the products I sell. They had a little bit stronger vision on, I want to serve consumers well in what they want, and then built the ecosystem around that. So that's why a lot of these brick and mortar brands really struggled with getting out of the gates, is because they had requirements on margin and expectations to shareholders on what they're going to deliver, that was built on a much different model. And so they weren't starting at zero. Back in the day, if Amazon lost 20% on an item and the next year they only lost 18%, that was bonus. Like, they made for it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
lose as much. And so, versus some of the bigger brick and mortar players, they started at a much higher bar, and to go backwards was really hard for what I'd say shareholders and or those businesses to take that hit and know, well, what is that ultimately for? When will we start making money back? So Amazon had quite a good foresight and vision to what that could lead to.
It's a great insight. What about on the brand side? Who's doing some exciting stuff? What does best in class look like now on ecom for the brand?
That's a great question, because you always think of the ones that are probably the most visible, which usually is the ones that have the deepest pockets.
Right.
Hey, I mean, you can just go look at who are the top brands, the top CPGs, and tend to walk down that list. They must be doing it well. If you take a peek inside, though, they're not. They just happen to have enough money to hide their own sins. Like, that didn't work, but we can market our way out of this or spin our way out of it. Where I see probably more best in class is probably the brands that are further down in terms of size, but are a lot more intentional with how they're going to market with those dollars, because they don't have the necessarily deepest pockets, but they are the most savvy. And so I would get out of the global top 100 and start looking down that next list, to look at what are brands that are making meaningful connections with consumers, very focused on what they're delivering from a product and experience standpoint, and aren't deviating. I mean, if I had to give one, we do have the privilege of working with Dude Wipes, but Sean Riley and his team have done a great job at staying very focused and not necessarily being wooed by expansion and cross category, like trying to get into more things with their brand. They're very intentional about what they do, and they test everything. So there's nothing like, no, we got it. They approach everything with humility, like, yeah, let's see if that's better. Which I think some of the bigger brands don't necessarily adopt as quickly. Those are some brands that are doing well and starting to really create a market share opportunity for themselves because of their focus and their drive for continual improvement.
So testing everything and not having any preset expectations, and I guess also not deciding this is going to work or isn't going to work, just the open
Yeah.
mind and the quick iterations.
Yeah. You can't be mindless. I think we all in this space are considering always like, here's what I think, but they're not arrogant enough to go, I was wrong. So I think that's mentality. But I think you all have to be thoughtful, because every dollar counts. It's either a dollar into your people that are supporting you, or a dollar into better performance in your media, or a dollar into the retailer to support you on shelf. So I do think that it's you got to approach it with meaningful, but not with arrogance on, no, we don't need to. We've done that before. Always look and say, can we do it better?
I want to go to retail media and content, but before I do that, I've learned a lot from you about leadership and teams. Tell me for a moment, how do you do that? How do you lead the team? You've got a great team there at Harvest. You work with so many great people. What are some learnings there?
I appreciate you saying that, Dave. I would say, and not saying that I'm great at this, but I do think that approach from a team spirit, like, I'm in it with you, not afraid to jump in and have the hard conversations, jump on the grenade with you. Like, I'm in it with them, and I think there develops a little bit of I think what I'm doing feeling. from the team instead of there are a number of leaders like just shout orders or why don't you figure it out? But I try to get in there with the team and can appreciate what they're doing. So I think there is just a level of appreciation, like okay, he knows it's just not super easy. There is some the hardness to it. So I think that's an approach I would take. So I try not to take myself too seriously, which I think that also, which probably limits my own growth on the upside. But I tell you, what's probably a testament is if I ever do leave a company, the fact that people that used to work for me would call me and say, "Can you take me with you?" That's kind of my badge of like, okay, that just getting in there with them. So as you probably do the same thing, Dave.
Hands on. I think that's great, and I also think the humility, like you said, and the approachableness is something I've definitely learned from you. So love it. Those are great. On to retail media. We get got to talk about retail media, right? Because that's such a big area. And content, I guess, is the other one. But retail media, we read about it. We see every retailer has got these big initiatives there. What are the headlines there? So it's appeared so quickly in the industry, and where are we in the retail media rollout? What do brands need to be thinking about now and the next 12, 24 months?
Yeah, it seemingly came out of nowhere. I just assumed it was LinkedIn got better at their targeting, and that's all I get to see anymore because I clicked on one retail media ad. No, I do think that it's accelerated. All the graphs would say that the dollars that have poured into these networks have just on such an accelerated pace. I think first of all, why is that? Is because of the immediacy of the performance and the access to that data. Brands have become, they took a sip of this elixir of, did it work? No, man, it's not working. Great, change it, do something else. And so that the retail media is like, well, I have another place for you to take those dollars, not just take them off. And so historic, a lot of the traditional mediums of media have historically been measured on a annual basis, and we'll run it for 6 months, and then it'll take another 6 months to read, and then we'll read it, assess it, and then we'll deploy it. But it'll take 6 months to deploy it. So they created these long cycles that I think stymied a little bit of that growth. But once you get the immediacy of some of the data, performance data that an Amazon or a Walmart Connect or a Roundel that can provide you with, is it working or not, then pivot. So that's where I think some of the explosiveness has come, and it's become pretty attractive to these brands. And back to what I'd said earlier, these brands are also seeing, they love to talk about their consumers of their products, and they actually get closer to that consumer when they can see the interactivity on these retail networks where they're actually buying the products. And so that close proximity to the point of purchase, I think, is also giving brands some excitement of, okay, they clicked on it, they purchased, that drove conversion. Okay, let's do it again. And so that's why I think some of that has lured some brands to spin there. And of course, the retailers are. I mean, we saw where Amazon really was the leader of this, and I think there's a lot of brands like, how they're not making any money on products. How are they making money? And as they scroll down through that annual report, they're like, I need to do that as well. So, and again, it's the Me Too feeling of like, I need to do that. And so, a lot of brands want more of those dollars. And I would say there's a lot of the marketing companies have controlled a lot of these dollars. And I've always said, kind of follow those dollars. And as retailers look up, and they said that I'm getting compressed with margins because I'm now I have to ship products to consumers in single boxes or deliver it in a delivery van. That's getting expensive. How do I make more money? And they're looking like, where's the money? It's all sitting in these big pockets of these media companies. How do I get some of that? And so the only way to get that is to offer options for them to spend. And so I think that's what these retail networks are like. I've got a great data set that I think you'd love to tap into. So, and of course, the acceleration of some of the degradation of the cookies, being able to trace people across the internet, I think is amplifying some of the richness of the retailer data that they have access to. And obviously, with the pandemic creating more volume in the e-commerce world, it's alluring for brands and holding companies to spend there.
That performance data that you mentioned, that historically has been in some cases hard to come by. Are you seeing a greater willingness to share that data and some of those insights, those performance insights?
Yes, because that's collateral for trade offs. So brands are like, what gives you the right to take these dollars, retail media network? Well, the retail media network is like, well, in return, I'll be able to give you these performance metrics in real time. Or I actually watch those consumers shop on my site and their path to purchase and whether or not they purchased on site or even in store. That closed loop measurement gives, like, I'll tell you if your media is working and not just trust me, that they might have had in the past. And that collateral is now data. And so that performance data is how many retail media networks are leveraging that to get some of those dollars. And of course, some of the leaders of the back that we mentioned Amazon with some of the access that they are granting through not so private Amazon Marketing Cloud, being able to tap into consumers' information of these groups of people and how they interact with your ads, multiple touches on it, so that it's multi-touch attribution. Like I know that they saw it 3 times, and if I say saw it 3 times, and then I serve them the fourth ad, they're 4 times likely to purchase versus the people only saw it 2. That gives me confidence to invest to show it 3 times to get that lift. That confidence in that data gives them like, okay, I know that my dollar is working hard for me instead of the I hope it's working hard. We'll see in my survey results.
100%. And that's top of funnel. And now what about the PDP and, add to cart and the sales? How does that tie into the performance data and what's available today?
So you get attributed data through retail networks of if somebody was exposed to your ad and then interacted with your ad through a click, then I can trace them and see did they end up converting and buying that. So that's attributed sales coming in. And then but they also can tell you how many times it was clicked. So the traffic. Traffic and conversion are two critical pieces of information to know how valuable your data is working for you, and then how hard your product page is working for you. And so that's some of the work that we really put a lot of focus on. You get some of that data through retail media. Some of the sites are actually sharing some of that information to help inspire. Do I need to update my PDP? Well, if people landed on your product page, you drove traffic to it with media through paid search, they clicked on your product and didn't buy it.
What's going on?
I mean, that conversion metric is very important. So that's like I need to hone in on that. So am I wasting money driving people to my PDP and nobody's buying? Or vice versa, when people land on my PDP, I have great conversion,
Hmm.
but I don't have anybody coming. So I got a clean house and nobody's there to come to my party. So that's then will help shift your focus on needing to drive more traffic to that, because once they land there, they enjoy the product or they have an aptitude to convert. So traffic and conversion are two major elements to help determine the effectiveness of your product, your page, and your content and your
Traffic and conversion. And how often should people be looking at these numbers? Is this all day, every day? Is it weekly? Is it monthly?
Great question. We tend to see a monthly view of this is a good snapshot, because once you make modifications, it takes a little bit of time for the retailer and their site to index all your pages and your changes so that it does serve it up. It takes a little bit of time for the consumer to see your product and then to re-interact with it. And then obviously you don't have the same people coming to the site every single day checking it out. And so there's just, if you look at purchase frequency and how many and site frequency, a month seems to be I'm making modifications. Let's see what type of benefit I got from those modifications, and then to redo. Else, maybe talk about watching a tennis match. You'd be back and forth. Do
Right.
this, do that, do
Right,
this,
right,
do that.
right.
So
Is it
ditch
yeah.
to ditch would be tough to manage by doing that daily.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got traffic, we've got conversions, new tactics that you're seeing.
outside of price.
Yeah.
A lot of people tend to push the buy now button when it's a good price.
Yeah.
So outside of some of this discounting, I do think that content's always been important. I think Dave, when I was working back with you, it's like never be content with bad content.
I
Like
was you beat me to it. I was just gonna say that, but
that
you
was
beat me to it. I love that one.
and it's like how many industry conferences do you go to and everyone's content is king. Like at some point, like are we still talking about this? But I do think content over the last 2 years has increased in its collateral and in its importance. And so, because of the differences that you need to exhibit across your different retail sites and also across your different consumers, just because you have a brand voice you want to make sure is consistent, that might not speak to the same person that might have landed on your product page at Walmart versus Amazon. And conversion tactics of what that PDP looks like. I mean, at Amazon, you don't even see the item description until you scroll down, versus at Walmart, it's really high up on the top. And so, and then just the reorchestration of where that content exists. And are you talking to a consumer, or are you talking to a shopper, different people, or are you talking to a computer? All of those are different voices you need to consider within the content, and it's meaningful to help win that click. And so I think if people are confident with that product, what they learned, whether it's in the carousel of images, just to get them confident. There's always this justification of people spending money. Like, was that a smart spend or not? I mean, how many times have you like buyer's remorse? It could be a bad bag of potato chips you don't like. Like, man, I feel bad. I bought spend even $1 on that, but or even if you buy something big, you want to justify it. So if you can feel really confident with that purchase up front, it's almost like pre-justification. Like, yeah, I'm going to buy that. I've got all the information now, and so I think that is just more of a trained behavior over time as e-commerce continues to be more of the way that people want to shop. It's important. And I would say content too on how big a package is super important. You don't know how many really, really tiny boxes I have or really big boxes that my wife, I'm like, why did you buy 5 pounds of rice? And she's like, I couldn't tell. Like, that's the first thing I was in search. So
Because I
she didn't
right.
look at price per se. She just, that's what I wanted. And so anyway, I think that's
Yeah.
important.
And to touch on that, the mobile heroes these days, super tactical, but a big topic of conversation when it comes to content. A lot of different standards, variations. What's going on there?
GS1 and now has become such a neutral party. I don't think they really tell you what to do, because now it seems like they do provide some guidelines, which is always great from a kind of a global body to provide some standards. But right now, it's kind of very iffy on whether or not your very specific buyer at Walmart, for example, will allow mobile ready images. What can come off the pack? Bar none, mobile ready images have to be part of your strategy, however they show up on page. Because if you look at the migration of the percentage of sales that are being done digitally that are on mobile versus desktop, landslide. It's in app or on mobile devices. So if you can't tell what that item really is and recognize, and I can't figure it out quickly, then you will lose out on a purchase. And don't design for the desktop, because that is actually much smaller percentage of people interacting with your items there. So mobile ready imaging, however you need to do it, whether it's optimizing just on pack and blowing up the size and or claims on the actual pack, or you have pills or some other fancy way to present your item in the sea of white backdrops. But the standards are set. I think the deployment of that varies by retailer and varies by buyer at that point, or category manager. But you can't do a one size fits all. Other than you need to know mobile ready should be part of your digital content strategy.
So mobile first. That's the got to do it, and then retailer specific.
That's what my
Yes,
kids tell me.
yes, exactly. Well, coming full circle here, we've got some exciting times ahead. AI is in every conversation. Thoughts there? You doing emails with ChatGPT. What are you seeing there when it comes to brands and retailers?
Yeah, it's so funny. You say AI. As a programmer by not by trade, but more by education. I did take an AI class. I programmed two velociraptors' path to eat someone. Anyway, that was my project, and to think that now we are now using it to write performance evaluations. So uh, it is a very useful tool in which to get you out of writer's block, to provide good, hey, just more consideration of, hey, did you think about these? Oh, that's a great way to put that. Or I didn't think about incorporating those things within it. Seems like writing is the most usage occasion within the business standpoint, whether you're writing up a recap, writing up an email that helps, like, oh, how do I communicate this? Now, of course, the content development is a big one of how can I do what Mark just told me to do of write great content. How can I leverage that with AI? And I see a lot of brands being able to do that. Quite honestly, it's hard to update item content quickly, especially if you're putting a lot of effort towards romance copy and how do I get brand voice, consumer voice, computer voice all into one. And so AI can help facilitate that more quickly. I think you're going to get into these A/B testing scenarios that will continually iterate to improve in a much more fast way. I would say my own worry about AI is it creates a very safe feeling environment. But if you load sensitive information into that, it's not on your computer. So, and which I think a lot of people forget about. Like, hey, you know what? I have a bunch of great data. I'm now going to put into ChatGPT as one example to help me analyze it. Well, guess what? You just shared that data with the world. You didn't realize it. And because you're going to a site, it's not like Google is, I'm asking a question and it's presenting results. But I think the ChatGPT have created these prompts that make it feel very organic to the Google search environment. Oh, great. And you're going to take more input. But we have to remember it's constantly refining. So you are now exposing all of these generative AI tools to your sensitive information. So I think that's hard for people to quickly get to that point. But there's a lot of usage occasions. It's so cool to see brands who are using this tool as a way to accelerate their learning, accelerate their position in the marketplace. Like, yeah.
The A/B testing you talked about, super interesting, but some risks there that at least you need to be aware of when you're working with this.
Yes, as I tell my kids when they're getting ready to write their essays at school, there's
There's risks,
risks.
100%. Well, Mark, before we wrap up here, I have a couple of closing questions to ask you, unrelated to e-commerce and digital marketing. First of all, outside of work, what do you like to do? What are some of your hobbies?
That's a hard one, Dave, because I think work is my hobby. So, but if I had to say, when did I feel great about something? I would say, I'm going to say I'm old, but I enjoy yard work. I don't know. I think it's because of the immediacy of, like, look what I did. So, I do think yard work, I feel like I did something, and I mean, not just improving our lives, but everybody in my neighbors, they all get to see a nice yard. So
It's therapeutic and a sense of accomplishment all at
yes,
once.
yes.
So, and it's something you can share. So I'm with you. I like that. And my second question for you is, if there are two people that you've learned from, who are those people?
I would say two people, and they probably don't even know that I would say this. There's a young man named David Mulally, and he was a brand manager with me at Procter and Gamble. And I think it's about the time you and I met, Dave, years ago, where I jumped into the e-commerce world, and he was a marketer. And as we see now, everyone's like, no, duh. But sales and marketing coming together, that is that is e-commerce. And the debate's like, where does e-commerce people roll up to, sales or marketing? But he was a friend of sales, and I was a friend of marketing, and we kind of came together. And I would say he taught me so much about the brand awareness, how important it is to present a brand and unaided awareness, like all of these marketing terms, and then the deployment of these funds into an e-commerce world to, I would say, to help orchestrate a shopper's journey to sell more stuff. And so I learned so much, and maybe it was just during that time of that accelerated learning curve that I had when I jumped into running Procter and Gamble's Walmart e-commerce business. But I was like, okay, that I I remember him very specifically. I still probably take some of his same learnings, and I'm sharing those even 11 years later. So he'd be one. And another gentleman, I think, and don't tell him, Dave, but Brian Gildenberg is somebody that, whether I learned from him directly, he's telling me something directly, but the way that he pieces together all of these, what I would say, disparate things that he's picked up through his global interactions with international markets, or his just listening to brands barriers, whether it's in these disciplines or just in retail in general, he always pieces these things together. It gives me aha moments. And so I just like, I learned something through him when he chats. So I would say he's one more of an industry leader that I have admired over the years of, okay, you're not going to go with status quo and answer the question, answer the question in the moderator asked in the same way because you heard that, but more of a, I put some thought against this and I'm actually going to call their bluff. And so anyway, I just like his approach to business. So
I love those. Those are both great, and couldn't agree more. So, Mark, thank you so much for doing this today.
yeah, that's great. Thank you for having me, man.
And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you online, or how can they reach you?
8675-309. No, I just kidding. I M Stamps at harvestgroup.com, and would love to chat, even if it's just about the industry. So M is in Mark, and then stamps, like postage stamps, at harvestgroup.com.
All right. We'll include that in the show notes. And Mark, thanks again.
All right. See you, brother. Good to see you.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard, please visit our website at itsrapid.ai, where you can find out more about creating e-commerce content and digital media at scale. And remember to subscribe to hear more great episodes of Beyond the Shelf. See you next time.